So by now I'm sure you've heard that gender is a social construct. It's a common argument used by feminists, SJWs, and by otherwise intelligent people. Gender is not a social construct, it's biological, and that's just an objective truth. However, I do concede that certain aspects of gender are socially constructed. Think of boys wear blue and girls wear pink. There's nothing in our biology that leads us to this behavior, but it's important to differentiate between expectations of gender and gender itself. You don't get to say that gender itself is socially constructed just because certain aspects of the expectations of gender are socially constructed. It's very interesting to me how the same people who will say that gender is a social construct will be the same people that argue for transgenderism and who say that trans identities are legitimate. And obviously I think they are legitimate, but when you say something like gender is a social construct, what you're basically saying is that trans people are just performers of gender, that they're just behaving like the opposite gender for shits and giggles, rather than how their biology is fueling them to behave. Personally, I see myself as irrefutable, living, breathing proof that gender is not a social construct. I had the social construct of gender placed on me from the moment I was born in the hospital and wrapped up in a blue blanket rather than a pink one. And if it was a social construct, then I should, by all means, identify and live my life as a man, but clearly that didn't work out. So let's just look at some really basic science to debunk this feminist argument. So male brains are about 10% larger than female brains. And no, that's not an indicator that men are smarter. Men also have about 7% more gray matter in the brain, and women have about 10% more white matter. In the cerebellum, men have more connections between hemispheres, which means an increased ability to translate perception into motor skill and ability, recognizing a threat and acting on it. Throughout evolution, males had to perform greater physical feats to defend the females and the children of the tribe, ensuring the survivability of its bloodline. In other words, men are more aggressive. So when feminists say, that we teach men to be aggressive and to be brutes and to go out there and be dominant, that's not actually true. That's in their blood. In contrast, women have more connections across the frontal lobes, which translates to an increased empathy, social skills, and nurturing behaviors. These are essential to raising children, which women are wired for. So when feminists say that the setup of men to go and work and women to have to stay home with the kids is because men want to exercise their dominance and patriarchal control, it's just false. That's our biology. That's how millions of years of evolution have mapped out our survival as a species. And you can make the argument that, we're more than just animals isn't as necessary. But at the end of the day, we are just animals and we're driven by our biology. We can definitely overcome that, but pretending as if it's some sort of social construct in which men are exerting their power over women is just conspiratorial. Next, we have to look at hormones, which absolutely dictate certain behaviors and inclinations of the genders. Higher testosterone in the body, which males have, fuel behaviors such as competitiveness, higher sex drive, more aggression, and providing resources to attract potential mates. These behaviors make total sense when you take into account our evolutionary needs and psychology. Women who have more estrogen have the instinct to nurture, empathize, and make themselves physically attractive for potential mates. Think of why women by and large choose majors in college that involve helping others. Psychology, child development, sociology. This is a direct result of their instinct to nurture and help others, not a social construct oppressing them and telling them they can't do anything else. Think of why there's a billion-dollar beauty industry. Women, whether they admit it or not, are driven by an instinct to be attractive to the opposite sex. This isn't a social contract telling women they must be beautiful. In the wild, being attractive to the opposite sex means ensuring resources. Think of why there are male cops, firefighters, and other men disproportionately in hero roles. Men have an instinct and desire to protect, especially women and children. So there are exceptions to the rules, obviously. Feminine men, masculine women, trans people, these are all exceptions to the rules. They're outliers, they're anomalies, and some may say that they have a genetic defect. But exceptions do not disprove a generality. So when it comes down to it, almost every behavior that we attribute with maleness or femaleness boils down to biology and evolution. Society has certainly, as a result, came to expect these gender-specific attributes and behaviors, but they didn't pop out of nowhere as a means to oppress people who don't fit into a rigid gender role. You don't get to change the definition of words to suit your narrative. Bye, guys.